Namaste. Welcome, beautiful souls. Welcome to my Friday Tarot Chat. Today, we are going to dive into the world of forgiveness, the concept of forgiveness. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that particular concept and how that might show up in the tarot. And I want to give a shout out to the Facebook group Tarot Nerds, maybe called Tarot Nerds Study Group right now. This is a group that I joined some years ago. It was started by a woman named Shauna Hill. And interestingly, Shauna lives here on the Sunshine Coast of British Columbia in Canada. And we have met a few times. We have studied together, practiced together, and I just think it's such a small world. And she started this group never thinking that it would grow to the number of followers that it has. So it was in that group that somebody posted a question about how forgiveness is represented in the tarot. And I thought this is a wonderful discussion to throw out there today and to begin for us to discuss. I'm going to share with you I believe there was, I wrote it down, 63 comments in this thread. And I'm going to share with you the cards that the majority of people spoke to in terms of forgiveness. Of course, I'm going to throw my own ideas in there, and I hope we can have a bit of a discussion, because I think this is a kind of a loaded question as well, too. Very sensitive question for some people, and so I also want to recognize that. Welcome, hello. Ramon Moonscarab, welcome. Lovely to see you as well, too. And Donna and Dee, namaste. My name is Sadhana, for those of you that are new to my channel. And it's Friday's discussion is wide open, and I am inspired by all kinds of places to create topics for Fridays, and your requests are also really important to me. And I had just an amazing reminder from one of my clients, one of my viewers who is a client, and she has reminded me to go back. I have some unfinished business in one of my tarot deep dives, and these reminders are really, really helpful. Yeah. Let's go to Donna's comment here. I saw your thumbnail for this literally right after reading about the Ace of Cups, the Eucharist and forgiveness, the secrets. Really? Yeah, I think there are. This is okay. So let's begin. Let's just dive into this. Forgiveness has been an important part of my healing journey in more ways than I can share with you. Forgiveness, and all of this is to me, okay? And every statement I'm making is to me, in my experience, throughout my journey. I have endured many things, and it has been through the deep work that I understand how certain experiences in our life hold a power over us. They may not appear to strangle us. It might not feel like we are on a string like a marionette, but there's certain stories in our lives that unless we release them, we are never free. And to me, this is all about the freedom on the other side of letting go. Forgiveness is fairly close to let go. It is never ever about condoning the actions or the inactions of the other who's on the other side of your story. It's only about you. It's only about you and your freedom. And that those different feelings and the way that your life will change if you choose to let go. It is a journey. It's not something that happens once. You don't attend one full moon ceremony and pledge to release a certain experience or emotion and it's gone. These things take time. They take time, and it's a very it's a journey that requires support. I really believe it's really nice if you can have help, a mentor, a guide along the way on this journey. All right, so welcome Saskia Kalispera. I saw that Hannah's here as well too. Namaste. Clevis, welcome. Welcome to all of you. Okay, so let's just start with the cards. I summarized of course I wrote this all down, did not put it in a spreadsheet. And there were 10 major arcana that were suggested, and 3 single digits, 5 with the number 1 is the second digit. Well, I guess all the rest, because, oh yeah, and there's one with the number 2. These are just I'm dropping hints here. So there was 10 majors suggested, and then so many minor arcana, but the predominant energy of the minor arcana were cups and swords. There was 1 pentacle card that was suggested. So a lot of cards. Yeah. The most common cards, there was no most common card. And there were also people who said, well, can't all of the cards represent forgiveness? Yeah. And I'm going to do my best. Yeah, and I would love to address many of your comments. Forgiveness in my vocabulary is, what can I give to someone in order to release? Yeah, the idea is that you don't want it clinging to you. Forgiveness is it could be like a cleaver. It could be a cleansing. It could be sage. It could be however you envision it. It has a way of, hi, Mary Beth, welcome. Joel is here as well too, and Lydia, namaste. And I know Mary Beth is very well versed in these practices as well too, and the work that she does. I wanted to highlight a comment from Donna, but it's I don't know where it went to. It starts with the word sometimes. Yes, go to this one. Sometimes it's easier to give intent to forgive when you know deep in your heart you really can't forgive. And for me, the peace it's about your freedom. It creates space for you. And it may never happen in this lifetime that we're able to forgive. This work for me started many, many years ago, and I was 12. I was babysitting. I remember this. So one of my stories is, I don't know how old I was. I was still in elementary school. So let's say I was 11. And the older brother of the children I was babysitting came home with his friends. Sorry, my heart is starting to race just telling the story, but I can tell it. I was sexually assaulted that night multiple times. It's partially blocked out of my memory. I don't believe I was actually raped, but I was sexually assaulted. I was taken down to the basement by one of the boys and then another boy. And later on in my life, I learned something about one of these boys. He was, at this point, quite a bit older. He was a father, and he was a recluse. He never came out of his house. There was something very odd about him, and I heard somebody talking about him. And it was at that point, and I had done quite a bit of work at that time, that I actually got to this place where I said to myself, for my part in this pain that you hold, obviously this man had other issues as well too, but for my part in this pain that you hold, in this dark world in which you live, I release you. And it was very freeing to me, because that was a night that I had completely suppressed, and I forget what triggered it. I mean, there's lots of work. Oh, I remember what triggered it. These bits and pieces of our lives that we heal through the years, for sure, the tarot can help us to heal that. But all I want to say here is that there's bits and pieces, and it may not all come together in a nice orderly fashion, but eventually you will have enough I'll call them clicks. It's like little things click into place that the freedom will come. Yeah. Thank you for your compassion, everybody. Welcome to Nancy. Hello. So, I really don't know where I want to go. Let's go look at the cards, and I will share with you some thoughts on this. So first of all, let's talk about the sixes. I'm going to get I've got the Tarot of the Hidden Realm up here. And the sixes were a card that many people mentioned as cards of forgiveness. This is the Six of Cups from Tarot of the Hidden Realm. I can put the other camera up. It's probably easier for you to look at. And I'll just put cards on the table from time to time here. So the sixes. Why the sixes? What is it about the sixes that would initiate release? It might be worthwhile getting at more sixes as well too. Sixes are a very important number for me and the tarot anyway, in that they it is the sacred geometry that they represent. Their connection to the heart chakra, and this place of peace and serenity that the sixes inspire. Now, if you're working Kabbalistically, this is at the Tiferet, at the Sephira of Tiferet. And there is quite a few paradigms where six is this perfect place, this perfect number, where we harmonize our life. And when we come into the heart chakra, when we're able to harmonize this energy in our life, it is easier to let go. it is easier to forgive. And the yogis teach that one of the greatest medicines, there's actually two. One of them is forgiveness. One of the greatest, well, there's a lot actually, medicines for the heart chakra is forgiveness. Gratitude is another one. The Dalai Lama would say it's compassion. So in order to find the peace and the harmony here, there's a spaciousness to this. Harmony is a spaciousness, and this sense of openness around us, I feel is definitely represented in the sixes. And were all the sixes mentioned? Six of Swords, Six of Cups. Six of Wands was one that was not mentioned. Six of Pentacles was. And I think yet I can find forgiveness in all of these. Perhaps, we could make up stories, and I think this is a beautiful way to connect with these cards. Sometime back, I did a series. We were looking at making intentions for all of these cards, or affirmations for all of the cards. I think I did about 3 Fridays on that. And if I'm looking at the Six of Wands, and I can use an example of one of my daughters who was a competitive figure skater. And, from time to time, she brings up that time in our life where I made her go to the rink at 6 a.m. I made her continue to take private lessons and to train. And I made her go to summer camp. And there was tremendous discipline in this. And my recollection of this isn't quite so severe. But this beautiful daughter of mine, when it came to the end of the year, it was every other year that we had an ice show. And because she was such a beautiful skater, she was featured and she had a lot of performances. And she really, really shone much more in the performances than in the competition. And this makes me think of not just athletes, but there's that card in the Anatolian deck where we see the ballerina on the stage. There's a lot of duress that comes with excellence. And if you think about this in the corporate world, I've always wondered about this card, stepping on people, stepping over people. How many people had to die for that soldier to come in on that horse? The ballerina on the stage, how many other prospective soloists didn't get to come forward on the stage and dance with that amazing partner? There's a journey to each of these sixes. And I think we need to look back and to remember and to reflect. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you. So the sixes, I think they reflect that. And we finally come into this place of peace and harmony. There's an opportunity here to say, and maybe the word forgive, maybe the word forgive is a little too hard, and so you need to find a synonym. And maybe that word is release. Release. My sister, many years ago, I remember when she gave me a copy of The Shack. I'm sure many of you have read that book. I was just, it took me a while to process that book. Not the spiritual experience of it, because that feels, I have no doubt about people's spiritual, mystical experiences, but the journey that father went through. And if you have never read that book, read that book. I think we need to hear stories like this. And if you want to talk about God or the divine, this is the ultimate, in my opinion, the ultimate trust is to put the, what would be the word? You know how people want to have vengeance. They want to have vengeance, revenge. You know, we need to, that's a lot to carry. That's a lot to carry. So I think if we can, over time, release that to spirit as well too, it can be very, very amazing. Now, another number. So the sixes were a very common number. And like I was saying, the cups. The three. And this goes into what, this was me. I believe I was the first person to respond to this thread. Actually, I was the second. So, and this is something very kind of, so the Six of Swords. One of the people who responded said, the Six of Swords means, and I forget what their phrase was. I think it's really important to, when we're describing cards, to soften that word a little bit. The Six of Swords can lean towards. The Six of Swords can express. I don't believe any of the cards in the tarot mean one thing or two things. It's important to be open to multiple interpretations when we're looking at any given card. So the Six of Swords was the first comment. And then I offered the Three of Swords. This is the first card that came to mind for me. And I have, I've done a lot of tarot study. I've done a lot of tarot teaching. And there's something very special about the threes, the sixes, and the nines. Something that is connected to divinity. And I've always seen, not always, but I've seen the number 3 connected to the full moon. The 2 is the waxing moon. The 3 is the full moon, and the 4 is the waning moon. This is one image that I have of the 2, the 3, and the 4. And also that would apply as well to the 5, 6, and 7. The 6 is the peak. And the 8. I could also do this with the 8, the 9, and the 10. So the 3, 6, and 9 has some sort of peak energy to it in these sequences. And many of you know that I have trained in shamanism and done quite a bit of my own work with the medicine wheel, but also my own healing through the medicine journey. And what I have learned is that you can even look at this card here, because this is my other suggestion, was the 3 of Cups is about forgiveness. In the 3s, this is the early peak in the minor arcana. And there's a fullness to the 3s. There's a richness, there's a fertileness, there's an abundance to the 3s. But in the energy of the full moon and the fullness, there is a simultaneous honoring and releasing. There's this moment where we understand that to celebrate is to let go. And when I think of the Three of Cups, and if we look and we literally feel the emotion of three humans coming together, the dancing, you can imagine there's singing, there's sharing, there are stories that are told. And when we gather with friends like this, isn't one of the greatest joys of the sharing, it's in the, through the voice, we let go of something. It's no longer us as an individual who is carrying that. And I can make this analogy for all of the threes, that there is this peak experience and then there is this letting go. And they go together. They are one. With abundance, there is release. And I think it's a really beautiful way to look at the Three of Cups. We are healed through that sharing. In the Three of Swords, we tend to focus on the grieving part of it. But there's also this fullness, this fullness of mind, this fullness of thought, this fullness of whatever your swords keywords are. And so I invite you to think about this, the threes, as this place where both of these things happen at the same time. In this, I also have another shout out, and that is to Esther at Mindful Tarot. And I want to thank Mary Beth, who's in the chat, and Clevis as well too. There's an annual tarot challenge that goes on in Esther's Facebook page, Mindful Tarot, and it's called Drop M78. That is an acronym. Don't ask me what it stands for. But in this challenge, we are to examine a card a day, and there's different steps or cues for each of the daily examinations. And several of the people who are doing this challenge, we started with the Pentacles, which is a really interesting suit to begin with, are using the Marielle Tarot. And there was quite a bit of discussion about the depiction of the Three of Pentacles in the Marielle Tarot, which is very similar to what you see here in the Tarot of the Hidden Realm. Why is there a baby in the Three of Pentacles? And, Saskia, you're doing it too. Wonderful. How might... And I want to talk about this in terms of, this is the Marielle Three of Discs. Oh, and here it is as Three of Wands. Isn't that interesting? That's so interesting. When I look at this card, I mean, there's so much that you can read into this card and based on if it's wands or discs, but the letting go part here is that, the baby is no longer safe in the womb. Now the baby is exposed to the world and all the things that might happen. But there's also this tremendous joy. If I think of birth in general, it's one of those experiences where it's all of this. Yeah. So I think forgiveness as the principle, as the practice of letting go is definitely reflected in the threes as well too. Now, interestingly, sixes and threes, nines, nobody mentioned the nines except for one card. And I wonder if you can guess which 9 people mentioned as a card of forgiveness, because there was only one. And I know the chat lags, so I'm just going to go ahead and answer the question. And that was the 9 of Swords. And I wonder if in any way we could bring this principle to the 3s, the 6s, and the 9s, all of them. All 12 of them. I've thought about this card a lot as, I think in the 9 of Swords, there's a lot of holding back. We see a lot of tension. A lot of tension. And it is the tension, the stress, the monkey mind that keeps us up at night, that creates the nightmares, if you read the card that way. But where I'm going with this is, and you've heard me say this before, if you can stay one moment longer in your meditation, if you do sit up in your bed and you're squirreling about something, and you actually sit quietly with it and let it work its way through, I feel you're really, really close to a brilliant aha moment here in the 9 of Swords. And in that way, that overwhelming fullness of the 9 of Swords, if you can hang in there just a little bit more, I think it's going to pierce through, and it's that piercing that is the release. So I could certainly make a case for that here. D, what is it's Donna and D are talking here. Aha, that pierces the heart. Oh, sorry. I missed your earlier comment, D, sorry. Donna says, I could make a case for all the 9s except maybe the 9 of Pentacles. Yeah. Anyway, this is just food for thought. Now, in the course of this thread, of course, there were many other numbers mentioned as well, too. And Donna mentioned that, as Donna Rian mentioned that as, and this is quite a different depiction, this is the Ace of Cups that she was reading. She was doing something else. She saw the thumbnail and thought of the Ace of Cups. Now, the Ace of Cups, look at this beautiful card. This looks more like an Ace of Cups. This idea of my cup runneth over. And there definitely is in an Ace of Cups that idea of flow, of letting go. And as I was saying, the most predominant suit that was mentioned in this thread was the suit of cups. And the Page of Cups was mentioned, the 8 of Cups. And I think this has to do with the idea of the flow of energy. Welcome to Witchy Wallflower, Arcana 73. Namaste. Ah, okay. Thank you. Thanks, Donna. Water wants to flow, you know? Water wants to flow. Water doesn't like being contained. There's that scene, one of my all-time favorite movies is Out of Africa. I have read the book many years ago too. And there's this scene where Karen, I believe it's after one of her rummage sales or near the end, where there's rain, and she wanted to create a pond early on her property. And at the end of the movie, she decides that they cannot contain the water any longer. There's a heavy rain or something. And she says something to the effect of, well, let it go. Let it go. She's acknowledging it was never mine. The water belongs to the people. It needs to return to Mombasa. It's kind of a foreshadowing of something that happens later on in the story. Water is it's a powerful energy, and it's healthiest when it's moving. You all know what happens when water is stagnant. And this is the same with contained emotions. Contained emotions. The Five of Cups, just think about what happens what happens to us physically when we contain emotions. And the fives were also cards that were mentioned as cards that could represent forgiveness. And I think the idea with the fives is that we are moving through something. And there is an invitation in the fives to move through that which is challenging you. So I could, I have all of the cup cards here. Four of Cups was also mentioned as a card of forgiveness. And I could make a case for forgiveness really in any of these cards. There's just something about water, and D says, it's funny, I look up, I look down. Water is a powerful initiator of change and creation. And simultaneously, I think we need to also acknowledge its power of cleansing. Water is a cleanser, right? It's purifying. And so in this way, the Suit of Cups is most definitely about forgiveness. There was only one court card that was brought into this discussion. Only one. Oh, no, the Page of Cups was, the Page of Cups. And by one person. And then there was one other court card that was mentioned many, many times. And it was the Queen of Cups. Forgiveness was, no other court card made an appearance in the discussion. So you might want to reflect on that, and why. Are there any other court cards where you might find forgiveness? And in what way what might that say? Yeah. Okay. So, major arcana. Shall we do that? 3, 6, and 9 were the majors of 3, 6, and 9 mentioned. Because in theory, if 3, 6, and 9 minors represent forgiveness, then shouldn't 3, 6, and 9 of the major arcana represent forgiveness? So, yeah, the answer is, 3, the Empress and the Lovers were discussed briefly. They were definitely not predominant cards, but nobody mentioned the Hermit as forgiveness. And oddly, of all of these three cards, I would say that the Hermit is, I could see forgiveness more in, I can understand perhaps the compassion of the Empress. Maybe that's where it is. But the Hermit is it's a inward journey. It's an inward journey to self-understanding, and part of that peeling away is definitely about forgiveness. Okay, so going back to the court cards, Donna says, I would think that all of the queens and kings would be archetypes for forgiveness as they have progressed to the end of the symbolic journey. And in their highest frequency, yeah, I agree. And then Donna also offers, I would think the Lover's card would also be a great card for self-forgiveness. Yeah. So let's not forget that this isn't always about forgiving another. Sometimes this is about forgiving oneself. And that can be the hardest kind of forgiveness. Yeah. Of course, the star was mentioned, and I think that the star fits in beautifully as a cleansing card. There's a magnificent star card in this deck. It's just beautiful. I really like the children in this deck. So the star is kind of perhaps an obvious one for some people. Again, I feel this, the theme here is spaciousness. What does forgiveness feels like? What does forgiveness feel like? To me, forgiveness feels like spaciousness, silence. And in that, there is a serenity. Things feel a whole lot easier. So as I mentioned, 10 different major arcana were mentioned in this discussion. And one of the cards that received quite a bit of attention was Justice. And this card goes by many names. Karmic justice, adjustment, karma, balance, right? Some decks it's called balance. So this is a major card of reset. I might read to you from, actually no, because there's some words here I can't say aloud. Yeah. So this also can be a hard pill to swallow sometimes, this particular card. And I think that is mainly due to the fact that we're not yet at the place where we can see the big picture. And until we're at the place where we can see the big picture, this can be a very difficult card. And maybe you could also, Donna's offered her expression of forgiveness. It's like your rib cage breaks open. Not that you want to experience broken ribs, but it's a freeing. It's so freeing. So let me know what forgiveness is to you while I share some of these other cards that were mentioned. There was suggestion that temperance is also forgiveness, and judgment. So there is, and in this deck, judgment is called life renewed, and I think that is kind of a fitting descriptor. There were others as well too. All of the cards of change, death, the Tower, those were also part of this discussion. Yeah, it's deep work. It's deep work, and you know that if sometimes we find ourselves at this place where you say to yourself, well, really? I'm thinking about that again? I thought I let that go. And you just kind of kick yourself. It's like, man, why? Why is that coming up again? And I think this is a reminder that how important this process is. I have suggested for Minnie, a student and client, the journey of this, how important the journey of this is. That if you were to practice forgiveness and this would be, each of your things. We often all have one predominant issue, and that if you were to practice this, let's say every full moon for a year, you would very likely have a breakthrough, and maybe even before the 12th full moon be able to find some peace. There's something about practicing that is so important, and even if those first few attempts feel false, I think that is, Spirit will recognize your effort to move to the other side. There's sometimes we just need to, I'm not sure that I can find words here. We need to shake things up. And there's strategies for speeding this up for sure. And you've heard me talk about visits to the ashram in India at various times. And one of the things that happens to most people is they get sick. And people assume that because it's India, you're sick because of the level of bacteria. That's the assumption. And, I can go back and talk about Samantha. I remember when I took Samantha to India. We were there for about 6 weeks, and I remember when she got sick. And I had been witnessing her responses we were on a Shakti Peeth tour, and she was emotionally becoming drained from the amount of spiritual work that we were doing. And it was, it's like it was breaking her down. It was opening her up to being a higher frequency, or releasing her soul from her slower three-dimensional body. So there's something about this practice of forgiveness, this practice of opening up, that allows for all of this to shine through in such a better way. And I'm sure that many people can understand what Clevis is saying here. And then D, if you don't begin with self-forgiveness, forgiving others will be harder and harder as life goes on. Being sick is often about releasing. Mm-hmm. And I know that's when I had my bout of COVID, I knew deep, deep in my soul that that's what it was. And the virus was a gift. I didn't know what it was about, but I knew it was yet another opening. Yeah. So I just want to leave you today to contemplate this and remember how important this concept is, and perhaps look through a tarot deck this afternoon, this evening, and just think about this. Maybe sitting quietly, a hand or hands on your heart, and bringing to mind an experience or another soul or yourself that you would like to honor with the gift of forgiveness. It's a powerful thing. Yeah. And I want to thank the soul who started this conversation in Tarot Nerds. I think it's important to bring up. So thank you all for being here today, and I want to wish you a lovely rest of your day. And know that, as always, if you ever have suggestions for the Friday chats, to please message me or write something in the comments below. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Take good care. Namaste.